On the stage of the ancient Near East, giants reigned: the warlike Assyrians, the mighty Babylonians, the majestic Egyptians. But among these empires, there was a people who did not seek to conquer the world, but instead slowly and surely changed it. And it is about the history of this legendary people that we will talk about today. Who are the Arameans? Where did they come from? How did it happen that their language became more important than their armies? Prepare to discover the hidden history of one of the most influential peoples in the history of mankind. Regarding the origin of the Arameans, there's no single point of view. The older scholarly tradition considered the Arameans to be nomadic tribes that came out of the Syrian-Arabian desert to invade and settle the fertile lands of Mesopotamia and Syria. Delacey O'Leary, in his work How Greek Science Passed to the Arabs, wrote that the Aramean people were a distant northern branch of the Arabs, desert nomads between Mesopotamia and Syria. According to the supporters of this theory, sometime at the end of the 12th century BCE, when great empires like the Hittite one declined, a political vacuum was formed, which allowed the Aramean tribes to actively resettle and establish their own states. A new generation of scholars offers an alternative model, according to which the Arameans were not foreigners, but an indigenous element of Syrian society of the Late Bronze Age. Thus, Helen Sater, a professor of archaeology at the American University of Beirut, in her work The 12th Century BCE in Syria, The Problem of the Rise of the Arameans, argues that if a massive invasion of a new people had occurred, archaeologists would have found the sudden appearance of a new, distinct material culture, different ceramics, new types of burials, unique architecture. However, this is not the case. Instead, archaeological data show that the material culture of the Aramean states does not differ significantly from the culture of their neighbors. In her opinion, this indicates that the Arameans were part of a wider Syrian cultural space, and not foreigners who brought something completely new. Wayne T. Pittard, an American historian and professor, also agrees with her, believing that the Arameans lived for centuries in the shadow of great empires, engaged in cattle breeding and agriculture until the Bronze Age empires declined, which created a political vacuum that allowed these local groups to establish themselves on the political stage and create their own states. An interesting theory, in my opinion, is also held by one of the most influential archaeologists and biblical scholars, William Albright, who directly stated that there is a connection between the Amorites and the Arameans, noting that the Arameans occupied approximately the same territories as the Amorites. And since there is no evidence of one population displacing another, this, in his opinion, speaks in favor of the Arameans being the descendants of the Amorites. This version is also supported by the records of the Assyrian kings Shalmaneser-Wursher and Tiglath-Pileser Farsher. It is in their chronicles that the combined term Ahlamu Aramaya first appears, which can be translated as Aramean semi-nomads. In the annals for the 4th year of his reign, Tiglath-Pileser boasts that he went into the desert, into the thick of the Alamu Arameans, to defeat them. He also notes that to subdue the Arameans, he had to cross the Euphrates 28 times, which indicates their significant military threat to Assyria. So these texts may indicate that the Assyrians initially used the term Ahlamu as a general name for nomadic groups in the West, and later began to specify that it was the Aramean branch of these tribes, until the name Arameans completely replaced the previous. It is noteworthy that the term Arameans itself was probably an exonym, that is, a name given to them from the outside by the Assyrians, and later borrowed into the Hebrew Bible. The Aramean dynasties themselves, with rare exceptions, such as the king of Aram-Damascus, did not use this term to refer to their people or territory. This suggests that during this period, a single pan-Aramean political or ethnic identity was weak or completely absent. Identity was local, centered around a city or a clan. The main form of self-identification was tribal connection, which was reflected in the names of the states with the prefix bet, which can be translated as house of. Thus, one can mention such states as Bet Adini, Bet Agusi, Bet Gabari, that is, These names may indicate lineage as the core of Aramean identity. The absence of a common self-name explains their political fragmentation. They never united because perhaps they never considered themselves a single people in need of this very unification. Thus, when speaking of the Arameans, we are using an Assyrian category that may and most likely does not reflect the political reality of that time. And if we have already started talking about states, then among the numerous Aramean political entities that arose in Syria and Mesopotamia, one achieved true power and historical significance: the kingdom of Aram-Damascus, which I have already mentioned. For almost 3 centuries, from the end of the 10th to 732 BCE, this kingdom was the dominant force in the Levant, a formidable opponent for both the Kingdom of Israel to the south and the Neo-Assyrian Empire to the north. The geographical and strategic basis of the kingdom was an oasis. That is where Damascus was located, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, where settlements have existed for millennia. Its location in a fertile oasis, fed by the Barada River, at the crossroads of major trade routes, made it a natural center of trade and power. The Arameans consolidated this territory, probably by introducing advanced irrigation technologies, and transformed the scattered settlements into a powerful capital of their new state. The oasis, which stretched 25 kilometers from north to south and 16 kilometers from west to east, provided food security and economic prosperity, allowing Damascus to support a large population and a powerful army. It is important to say that before Damascus became the undisputed center of Aramean power, the political landscape of Syria was shaped by another powerful Aramean kingdom, Aram-Zoba, located probably in the Bekaa Valley. It was headed by the mighty ruler Hadadezer, who united under his rule numerous city-states and tribes from Hamath to Makkah. The end of his hegemony was put by the Kingdom of Israel under the leadership of David, who inflicted several defeats on him, and then completely destroyed Aram-Zoba, creating a power vacuum that was filled by Rezon, the son of Eliada, a former warrior from Hadadezer's own army. Well, that is, of course, if we believe the Book of Kings. Be that as it may, on the ashes of Aram-Zoba, Rezon founded a new, stable Aramean kingdom in Damascus, Aram-Damascus, which would become the main rival of Israel in the future. After the founding of the kingdom by Rezon, Aram-Damascus entered a period of consolidation and expansion under a dynasty whose members bore the name or title of Ben-Hadad. This title, which literally means son of the god Hadad, points to the central role of the cult of the Mesopotamian storm god Hadad in the royal ideology and the principle of legitimizing power. Also known as Raman, the Thunderer, identified with the biblical Rimmon, the god of storm and thunder, Hadad was the lord of the heavens and was depicted as a bearded deity with a club and a lightning bolt, and was often associated with a bull. He was the divine patron of royal power, and the Aramean rulers often attributed their victories to him. The Arameans also took the moon god Sin and the sun god Shamash from the Mesopotamian pantheon, but they took the main female deity from the Canaanite pantheon. Thus, among the Arameans, Astarte became Atargatis. The wife of Hadad, she was the personification of fertility, well-being, and protection. Her cult was extremely widespread, and the goddess herself was often depicted as a woman, with a fish tail or surrounded by fish and doves. The first significant ruler of this dynasty, about whom we have information, was Ben-Hadad I, the son of Taberman and grandson of Hetzion. His reign falls in the first half of the 9th century BCE. And this is the very time when, after the death of Solomon, the rivalry between northern Israel and southern Judah begins. Together with the latter, he and then his successor Ben-Hadad II will wage endless wars against Israel, which will only get a break due to the aggressive expansion of the Neo-Assyrian Empire under King Shalmaneser III. Realizing the mortal danger that hung over them, the states of the Levant took an unprecedented step. They united into a large military coalition to stop the Assyrian advance. The leader of this coalition was the king of Aram-Damascus, Adad-Idri, or Ben-Hadad II. The combined forces met the Assyrian army in 853 BCE, near the city of Karkar on the Orontes River. Shalmaneser III in his inscription boasts of a crushing victory, claiming that he killed 14,000 enemy soldiers and dammed the Orontes River with their corpses. However, the reality was probably different. The fact that the Assyrian king could not advance further south, did not capture Damascus, indicates that the battle most likely ended in a strategic draw. The coalition led by Damascus achieved its main goal. It stopped the Assyrian expansion for a decade. However, Aram-Damascus would reach its maximum strength under Hazael, who, after killing Ben-Hadad, seized the throne and again launched military campaigns against Israel and Judah. Hazael conquered all the Israelite territories east of the Jordan River, captured the Philistine city of Gath, and even reached Jerusalem, the capital of the Judean kingdom, where he retreated only after the Judean king Joash bought him off with all the treasures of the temple and the royal palace. The reign of Hazael is unique in that he transformed from a biblical character into one of the most tangible and well-attested figures of the Iron Age Levant, thanks to a number of outstanding archaeological finds. The most important find related to Hazael is a fragmentary basalt stele found at Tel Dan in 1993. This monumental inscription, made in Aramaic, was most likely erected by Hazael himself in honor of his victories over Israel and Judah. It says that Hazael takes responsibility for the deaths of Joram, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah. But the most important line is the phrase, Bet David, House of David. This is the first, and so far, the only extra-biblical archaeological evidence that mentions the dynasty of King David. This confirms that 150 years after the death of David, his dynasty was known to the enemies of Israel as the House of David. However, the state built by Hazael proved to be short-lived. His son and successor, Ben-Hadad III, in Aramaic sources Bar-Hadad, inherited the throne but was unable to maintain the dominant position of his father. The reign of Ben-Hadad III coincided with two geopolitical processes unfavorable to Damascus. First, the pressure from Assyria from the east resumed. The Assyrian king Adad-Nirari III launched a campaign against Damascus around 796 BCE, besieged the city, and forced Ben-Hadad III to recognize himself as a vassal and pay a huge tribute. Second, the Kingdom of Israel, having freed itself from the Aramean yoke, was experiencing a period of revival under King Joash. Taking advantage of the weakening of Damascus after the Assyrian campaign, Joash inflicted 3 defeats on Ben-Hadad III and regained all the cities previously captured by Hazael. Thus, Aram-Damascus found itself in a geopolitical vice. It was squeezed between a resurgent Israel to the south and the relentless imperial machine of Assyria to the north. The last desperate attempt to maintain independence from Assyria was the Syro-Ephraimite War, when the coalition forces of Israel and Aram-Damascus were defeated by Tiglath-Pileser III. In 732 BCE, Damascus fell. Tiglath-Pileser III executed King Rezin, deported a significant part of the population, and liquidated the kingdom itself, turning it into an Assyrian province. This event, which is recorded both in the Bible and in Assyrian inscriptions, put an end to the independent history of Aram-Damascus. A more significant and lasting legacy of Aram-Damascus and other Aramean kingdoms was not their political power, but their language. Initially, Aramaic was the language of a group of Semitic tribes, but over time, it spread far beyond the ethnic Aramean territories. This process occurred in a paradoxical way. The political defeat of the Aramean kingdoms by the Neo-Assyrian Empire became the catalyst for the cultural triumph of their language. The Assyrians, having conquered the Aramean states, did not try to eradicate or ban the Aramaic language. On the contrary, due to its wide distribution in Syria and Mesopotamia, due to the presence of a large number of Aramean scribes, they adopted it as the second official language of their vast multilingual empire. Aramaic, with its simpler alphabetic script, proved to be much more convenient for administration and trade than the complex Akkadian cuneiform. This practice was inherited by subsequent empires, the Neo-Babylonian and the Achaemenid. During the Persian era, Imperial Aramaic became the official language of administration and diplomacy throughout the territory from Egypt to India. Thus, the empires that destroyed the Aramean states became the main distributors of their language. The Aramaic language became the lingua franca of the entire Near East for over 1,000 years. It was spoken in Judea at the time of Jesus Christ. Significant parts of the biblical books of Daniel and Ezra, as well as the Talmud, were written in it. It became the liturgical language of Syriac Christianity and is still preserved in small communities in the Middle East. Thus, the conquest of Aram-Damascus by Assyria, which put an end to its political existence, paradoxically ensured the global success and longevity of its most important cultural contribution, the Aramaic language. The history of the Arameans is a unique example of how a people's political defeat can become a mechanism for their cultural and linguistic victory. Although their city-states were wiped off the political map by the Assyrian Empire, their language and written culture were spread by the same empire and its successors. The Arameans thus did not disappear, but were transformed. Their legacy lies not in the ruins of destroyed kingdoms, but in the writing, language, and religious traditions that shaped the Near East for a millennium and continue to echo in the modern world. They are a testament to the fact that cultural influence can outlive political power, and the quiet conquest of languages can prove more durable than the roar of imperial armies. Friends, thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments.